the first pattern piece we'll create will be the rear quarter. So we'll start with the obvious and draw in this top edge. And the bottom. Now, the next two will be a bit more complicated. On this back edge of the rear quarter, you have two options. On this pair, what I did was take this piece to about there, so let's say 10mm margin, and these pieces end here and meet up in the middle. The problem with that is that you end up with one thickness and then two and then one, which is fine here, but down here you go from 1 to 2 to 1 to 2 to 1. And so you've got this strange lumpy effect down here. What I did on this pair, as you can see, hopefully you can see it in there. Well, you can't. But I joined the rear quarters down there. So these actually extend all the way to the middle, and then they're sewn together, and then this is sewn over the top. Now, the benefit of that, the first benefit is that you don't have that constant change of thickness, but also it means that the heel is more rigid because it's got two layers of leather all the way over. So it's nice and strong. Now, on the pair of shoes that we're making, we're doing an unstructured design, so there won't be any stiffeners, which is like this one. It's got a soft toe and a fairly soft heel, compared to this one, which has a stiffener in the toe, which gives it that very solid shape. So on this pair, I'm going to extend the rear quarter all the way to the back, like so. On this edge, obviously we can't put a pencil through there, so we'll get out awl, we'll mark the important parts, so there, mark the lace holes. I've gone with 4 on this, but 3 would be totally fine. And for the rest of it, you can either use an awl and poke all the way around to transfer it through the other side, or I'm going to try and use this stitching wheel, or whatever it's called. So if I pull that off, we've got the pencil lines we've already made, and then you can't really see it on camera, but there's this very clear dotted line. It goes all the way. So I'll copy that in. Smooth out some of those curves where I messed up. And there is our rear quarter. So it's helpful to label them. So this is rear quarter. And I'm going to call this the YouTube derby. And it's a size 10. All right, then just cut it out. You don't really need to see this. there's your first pattern piece, done. I forgot to say, when you're making this one, draw in where the back strap is going to sit on the rear quarter, so that when you sew it up, you know where it's all going to go. Now we're going to make the Vamp pattern piece. So get your piece of card and fold it in half. And the reason we're folding it is because this piece is actually half of the finished piece. And so we need to cut this side and then match the other side perfectly, and the easiest way to do that is to put it on a fold like this. So you've got your fold, and we're going to not draw in the whole thing, but you'll see this point where the standard curves up. So we're going to draw in until we reach about there, and then I'm going to turn it, draw in a little bit further. So you should be able to see that I'm trying to line up this edge, well, that little part of that curve, with the fold. And hopefully this should give us a pretty accurate idea of what shape the leather needs to be in order to stretch into the final shape. So now that I've got this straight edge lined up, I can finish drawing. Then I can mark in here. I'm going to stop about here. Mark that opening point. Right. So I'm just going to do a couple of dots across the top here, but that won't be where we cut it. So we can now remove that. So what we've got, that bottom edge is all good. It'll just need to be smoothed out a bit. This bottom surface doesn't need to be pretty because it's going to end up around here and a bit of it will be cut off. You will never see it again. So these curves don't really have to match up to each other. The important ones are the visible ones around here. So I'll draw this in. Now, let's see if I can zoom in. This section, this is going to be the tongue. There we go. Now, you'll see the tongue on this is probably 60, 70 mil wide, but this section here is probably only 15 mil wide. So that's because there's an overlap here where the rear quarter overlaps the tongue by maybe 15 mil or so, and so we need to add that overlap onto the tongue. So those points there mark the top of the rear quarter, and so if we want an overlap of, let's say, 15 millimeters, we draw that in. also going to, now you don't want the tongue to stick up too far out here because it'll look a bit silly, but you don't want it to end too short because it'll also look silly. So you end up basically ending in the same point as the rear quarters. Just that line should be perpendicular to the fold, then give it a little curve. That should be it. So we have our Vamp pattern piece here. The only thing left to add is a margin around here. So that will be where the Vamp piece extends under the rear quarter so they can be attached. So this piece actually sits about 15 mil below that line or past that line. So we're going to do the same here, add 15 millimeters. There we go. All right, what's next? We need to add some little windows. Now what these are, they are marking this line. So when you stitch it all together, you need to know where to line up this edge on the rear quarter on the Vamp. And so we'll cut some little windows along this line so that when you mark out your leather, you can draw in that point. So, see how they're little crescent moon shapes? You don't need many of them. They only need to be just short little things. All right, now we've got those little windows. Once you've done that, remember we need to label it like that, and then we can cut this whole piece out. So this piece is called the Vamp. There we have it. There is our finished Vamp pattern piece. So the backstrap piece will follow the same idea as the Vamp. We've got to make it around a fold and match up that curve as we go. So I'll fold our piece. All right. So I'm going to start at the bottom here because on the top I may add a bit of extra. You'll see on this pair I've added quite a lot there as a pull tab. So there's that option. You can have a big pull tab or you can do something smaller and more subtle. Or like on this piece here, you can, there you go, you can just see that it doesn't stick up, but I've just folded it over. It's just a nice little detail, but you can do what you want there. So starting at the bottom, now this isn't an easy process and you have to keep tweaking. So I'm going to curve it again, and just keep going along like so. It gets harder because we're not just dealing with a simple curve here. It's both convex and concave. So it's going to look a little bit funky. All right. So you should just be able to see a set of holes there. So I'm going to fill them in. And then I'm going to extend this up as far as I want to go. I probably won't take it that far, but you get the idea. Now, time to cut it out. There you go, it's only small. I'll label it. Backstrap, YouTube, derby, size 10. So I should decide how much I want it to stick up at the top. I think I'm going to add maybe about 10 mil of tab here, just to get a little something to hold on to. So that works out to be, if that's the top of our shoe right there, that's where our last dot is. Then I need to add 10 mil to stick up, 10 mil to fold over, and then another 10 mil to tuck it in and sew over it. So that's our seam allowance. So 30 mil. There we go. There is your backstrap piece. Right, in today's lesson, we took the masking tape off our last, used that to create a standard, which included a 20 mil lasting allowance down the bottom here. From there, we made the rear quarter pattern piece, the Vamp pattern piece, where we made sure to follow that curve and add a 15 mil seam allowance here, and also these little windows for marking. And lastly, we created the backstrap piece, which included a little bit extra for a pull tab. We are done. Next time round, we're going to actually start making the shoe, so we'll use all of these to start cutting our leather. See you next time.